Don't applaud him yet, I whispered to myself as the yacht's polished glass reflected a woman I barely recognized. Everyone else saw luxury. I saw the exact place where my marriage was about to become someone else's favorite cocktail story. The Atlantic breeze carried laughter across the upper deck as crystal glasses clinked beneath strings of warm white lights. A live jazz quartet played near the bow while servers in pressed white jackets floated through the crowd balancing silver trays filled with champagne. It looked like the kind of night magazines called Unforgettable. They were right, just not for the reason anyone expected. Nathan Caldwell stood beneath the glowing company logo projected against the yacht's towering sail, one arm comfortably wrapped around Vanessa Pierce. Cameras flashed every few seconds. Investors smiled. Influencers raised their phones. Business reporters whispered to one another, eager for tomorrow's headlines. America's golden millionaire had finally found the woman who truly belonged at his side. That was the story everyone believed. It wasn't the truth. 7 months earlier, Nathan had promised me forever. For months earlier, he kissed my forehead before leaving for what he called another exhausting business trip. 3 weeks earlier, he stopped wearing his wedding ring in public. Tonight, he wasn't even pretending anymore. Vanessa laughed as she adjusted the diamond bracelet Nathan had given her only days before. The same bracelet I had unknowingly helped choose when his assistant claimed it was for an anonymous charity auction. Funny how expensive lies always came wrapped in beautiful boxes. A familiar voice echoed across the deck as Nathan lifted a champagne glass toward the crowd. Tonight isn't just about another successful year. It's about new beginnings. The applause rolled across the water like gentle thunder. Vanessa leaned closer, smiling for every camera. Nathan looked happier than he had in months. Maybe because he believed the hardest part was already behind him. Maybe because he believed I would never show up. That was his biggest mistake. Across the marina, a black SUV eased to a quiet stop beside the private dock. The driver stepped out first, then walked to the rear passenger door without saying a word. I rested one hand over my baby as the door slowly opened. My daughter shifted gently beneath my dress, almost as if she could feel my heartbeat refusing to slow down. "We're here," the driver said softly. I nodded but didn't move. Not yet. There was one more thing I needed to look at. Inside my purse rested a simple ivory envelope. No jewelry, no dramatic letter, no legal threat. Just one document that had the power to change every smile waiting on that yacht. I hadn't shown it to anyone. Not my attorney. Not my closest friend. Not even the man waiting quietly several steps behind me, whose invitation alone could silence an entire room. He caught my eye, but offered no advice. He simply gave the smallest nod, the kind people give when they already know history is about to change. Above us, fireworks suddenly burst across the evening sky, showering the harbor with gold reflections. Cheers erupted from the yacht as Nathan reached for Vanessa's hand. Everyone believed they were witnessing the beginning of a perfect future. None of them noticed the woman walking toward the boarding ramp. None of them knew she was still his wife. And absolutely no one knew why she was smiling. 6 months earlier, the same harbor looked completely different through Claire Whitmore's eyes. She remembered standing beside Nathan Caldwell at sunrise, wrapped in his navy blazer because she had forgotten her sweater, laughing as seagulls circled above the quiet marina. Back then, the yacht had not been a stage. It had been their escape. Nathan used to tell her that success meant nothing if he could not celebrate it with the woman who believed in him before anyone else did. Claire believed every word. She had been there when his office consisted of 2 rented rooms above an aging seafood restaurant. She had watched him pitch impossible ideas to skeptical investors. She had listened to endless late-night phone calls, rewritten presentations, and encouraged him after every rejection. When the first major contract finally came through, Nathan had lifted her into the air and whispered, "One day, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret believing in me." She never imagined those words would become the promise he would break first. The positive pregnancy test appeared on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Claire stared at the tiny screen for nearly 5 minutes before she could believe it. They had been trying for almost 2 years. Every doctor's appointment had ended with another reminder to stay hopeful. Every holiday had come with quiet questions from relatives asking when they planned to start a family. Then, without warning, hope arrived in the smallest possible package. Nathan cried when she told him. Real tears. He dropped to one knee, wrapped both hands around her waist, and spoke to their unborn baby before there was even a visible bump. Claire replayed that memory so many times that she could still hear the excitement in his voice. That was what made everything afterward so confusing. The changes did not happen overnight. They slipped quietly into their lives one ordinary day at a time. Nathan started canceling dinner plans because unexpected meetings kept appearing on his calendar. Weekend breakfasts became conference calls. Vacation plans quietly disappeared. His phone, once left carelessly on every countertop in the house, never left his pocket anymore. At first, Claire blamed the company. Rapid growth demanded sacrifice. That was the price of success, Nathan often reminded her. She wanted to believe him. She even defended him whenever friends hinted that something felt different. Then came the tiny details that refused to fit together. A restaurant receipt from a city Nathan insisted he had never visited. A luxury hotel charge during what was supposed to be a one-day investor meeting. A designer perfume lingering on his jacket, unfamiliar and impossible to explain away. Each clue alone meant nothing. Together, they became impossible to ignore. Claire never confronted him immediately. Instead, she watched. She listened. She waited. One rainy afternoon, while organizing files in the home office, she found an invitation tucked beneath a stack of financial reports. It was for an exclusive charity gala held 3 months earlier. Nathan had told her the event was canceled because severe weather forced organizers to postpone it. Except the invitation had already been stamped as attended. Someone had signed in using his name. There was one additional guest listed beside him, Vanessa Pierce. Claire quietly returned the invitation exactly where she found it. She said nothing that evening. She smiled through dinner. She asked about his day. She even laughed at one of his stories. Nathan never noticed how carefully she studied his answers. Because while he believed he was protecting a secret, Claire had already started uncovering something much larger than an affair. And the first unexpected piece arrived less than 48 hours later, hidden inside a routine email that should never have reached her inbox. Claire stared at the email for nearly a full minute before opening it. The subject line looked painfully ordinary. Quarterly vendor approval update. It should have gone directly to Nathan's executive office, not her personal inbox. She almost deleted it without reading. Instead, curiosity won. Attached was a spreadsheet listing payments, event expenses, travel reimbursements, and executive entertainment budgets. Most of it meant nothing to her. Then one line stopped her cold. Harbor View events. Private yacht reservation. Guest experience package. The date matched the weekend Nathan had claimed he was flying to Seattle for emergency negotiations. Claire frowned and opened another attachment. It contained digital approval signatures. Nathan's name appeared at the bottom. Just beneath it sat another electronic acknowledgement from Vanessa Pierce. She quietly closed the laptop as the front door opened downstairs. Nathan walked inside carrying fresh flowers and her favorite lemon cake from the neighborhood bakery. He smiled the same charming smile that had once convinced complete strangers to invest millions of dollars in impossible dreams. "How are my 2 favorite girls doing?" he asked, kneeling to kiss her forehead before gently placing a hand against her growing belly. Their daughter shifted slightly, and Nathan laughed with genuine delight. For one confusing moment, Claire questioned everything she had seen. Could a man lie so easily while sounding so sincere? Could someone truly care about the family waiting at home while building another life somewhere else? She wanted the answer to be no. Her heart already suspected otherwise. Over the following weeks, she stopped searching for proof. Instead, proof seemed determined to find her. A photographer accidentally tagged Nathan in background photos from a luxury fundraiser he insisted he never attended. A financial newsletter published images of prominent guests arriving at a charity dinner. Nathan appeared in one frame just behind Vanessa. They were not holding hands. They were not embracing. But they were looking at each other with a familiarity that no business meeting could explain. Claire downloaded every image without saying a word. She created a folder on her laptop and labeled it simply Documents. She never looked at it unless something new appeared. Then came the voicemail. It lasted only 12 seconds. A female voice laughed before saying, "Tell Nathan tomorrow night still works. I already reserved the suite." The message ended abruptly, apparently sent to the wrong contact by mistake before being deleted. Except it had synchronized through a shared cloud account that neither of them remembered still existed. Claire listened only once. She never needed to hear it again. Strangely, she did not cry. The tears had disappeared somewhere between disbelief and acceptance. She became calmer than she had ever been. Nathan interpreted her silence as trust. In reality, it was observation. Every conversation became another puzzle piece. Every explanation became another comparison against facts she quietly collected. One afternoon, while leaving her prenatal appointment, Claire noticed a familiar luxury sedan parked across the street. Nathan climbed out from the driver's seat. Vanessa stepped out moments later from the passenger side. They never noticed Claire watching through the clinic window. Nathan adjusted Vanessa's scarf before both of them disappeared into a nearby office building. Claire instinctively rested both hands over her stomach. The baby gave one gentle kick, almost like a reminder that she was not standing there alone anymore. That evening, Nathan arrived home carrying baby clothes and talking excitedly about decorating the nursery. Claire smiled, thanked him, and folded every tiny outfit with perfect care. She wondered whether guilt always sounded so convincing or whether some people eventually believe their own stories. 2 days later, her phone rang from an unfamiliar number. The man on the other end spoke calmly and politely. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, "I believe there are several things about your husband's business that you deserve to know. If you are willing to listen, I can prove that what you have discovered so far is only the beginning." Claire almost ended the call 3 different times before the man finished his first sentence. His voice was calm, measured, almost detached, as though he had repeated the same warning to himself for weeks before dialing her number. "You do not know me," he said, "and I do not expect your trust. But if you care about your child, you need the truth before everyone else hears it." Claire remained silent. Outside the coffee shop where she had stopped after her appointment, afternoon traffic drifted past in slow waves. Inside, the scent of roasted coffee beans mixed with quiet conversations that suddenly felt 1,000 miles away. "Who are you?" she finally asked. Someone who used to believe Nathan Caldwell was an honest man. The answer revealed almost nothing, yet somehow it sounded completely sincere. The caller explained that he had worked with one of Nathan's investment partners several years earlier. During a routine financial review, unusual transactions had surfaced. At first they looked harmless, the kind of complicated corporate structures wealthy executives often used. But the deeper investigators looked, the stranger everything became. Shell companies, hidden partnerships, payments routed through businesses that barely existed. Claire closed her eyes. She had expected another story about Vanessa. Instead, she was hearing something much larger. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. "Because your name appears on documents you have probably never seen." Those words settled over her like cold rain. The man refused to discuss details over the phone. Instead, he offered a single meeting in a public place. No lawyers, no reporters, no recordings. Claire almost refused. Every warning she had ever heard about strangers echoed through her mind. Then he mentioned something that froze her completely. The yacht celebration next Saturday is not just an anniversary party. It is designed to announce much more than a relationship. The line went silent for several seconds before he added, "You deserve to know what they plan to announce before they do it in front of the world." Claire agreed to meet him the following afternoon. The restaurant overlooked a quiet lake nearly 40 miles outside the city. Families filled the outdoor patio while children tossed pieces of bread toward curious ducks swimming near the wooden dock. Nothing about the setting suggested life-changing conversations. The man waiting inside introduced himself as Daniel Harper, a certified forensic accountant who had spent almost 20 years examining complex corporate records. He looked ordinary in every possible way. Gray sport coat, reading glasses, simple wristwatch. If Claire had passed him on the street, she would never have looked twice. Daniel placed a thin folder on the table, but kept one hand resting on top of it. "Before I show you this," he said, "I need to ask one question. Has Nathan ever asked you to sign financial paperwork without fully explaining it?" Claire thought back over the past 3 years. Property refinances, insurance updates, tax forms, charity agreements, executive disclosures. Nathan had always summarized everything in a few confident sentences before sliding documents toward her with a warm smile. "Just routine paperwork," he always said. She had trusted him completely. Daniel slowly opened the folder. Inside were copies of several signatures that looked unmistakably like hers. Claire leaned closer. Every signature was authentic. Every page carried her name, yet she did not remember signing most of them. Daniel quietly explained that many had been included inside large stacks of perfectly legitimate documents. A few additional pages had apparently been inserted without drawing attention. Her signature had legally connected her to business entities she had never heard of. Claire's heartbeat quickened, but Daniel raised one reassuring hand. "Do not panic," he said. "I have spent weeks verifying these records. I also believe someone else has been quietly preparing for this moment." Claire frowned. "What do you mean?" Daniel reached into the folder one final time and removed a cream-colored envelope addressed in elegant handwriting. "This arrived at my office yesterday," he said. "It was left without a return address, along with one message." Claire carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single invitation. The location printed across the bottom matched the yacht waiting in the harbor. Beneath it, written in blue ink, were 7 words that made her pulse stop for just a moment. "Do not be afraid. Let them begin first." Claire folded the invitation carefully and slipped it back into the envelope without saying a word. Daniel Harper watched her with the quiet patience of someone who understood that the loudest moments in life often happened in complete silence. Outside, a light breeze rippled across the lake while families continued their peaceful afternoon, completely unaware that a single envelope had just changed the direction of another person's future. "Who sent this?" Claire finally asked. Daniel slowly shook his head. "I honestly do not know. It was delivered to my office before sunrise. No camera footage, no return address, just your name, the invitation, and that handwritten message." Claire traced her fingers across the elegant blue ink once more. "Do not be afraid. Let them begin first." The sentence felt strangely personal, as though someone understood exactly how frightened she had been for months. Daniel reached into his briefcase again and carefully removed another folder, this one much thicker than the first. "There is something else you should see," he said. Inside were photographs, corporate registration records, investment agreements, and timelines connecting dozens of transactions over the previous 2 years. Claire recognized several company names from Nathan's conversations at home. Others were completely unfamiliar. Daniel calmly explained each page without rushing. None of the documents proved criminal behavior, but together they revealed a carefully managed public image that looked very different behind closed doors. Several assets had quietly shifted between business entities shortly before major announcements. Certain luxury purchases had been billed as executive hospitality. Expensive trips had been categorized as investor relations. Every explanation sounded perfectly reasonable until all of them were placed beside one another. "The pattern matters more than any single document," Daniel explained. "Patterns tell stories that individual pages never can." Claire nodded slowly. She understood exactly what he meant. For months, she had collected little moments that seemed harmless on their own. A canceled dinner, an unfamiliar receipt, a forgotten voicemail, a photograph taken at the wrong place. Together, they formed a picture she could no longer ignore. "What happens if I simply walk away?" she asked quietly. Daniel did not answer immediately. He looked out across the water before turning back toward her. "You absolutely can. Nobody can force you into this. But if you choose silence, they will control the story. If you choose the truth, at least your daughter will one day know that her mother never accepted a lie simply because it was comfortable." Claire looked down at the gentle curve of her stomach. Her daughter shifted again, almost perfectly on cue. A small smile appeared for the first time in weeks. Not because she felt hopeful, but because she suddenly felt clear. Fear had ruled every decision since she first suspected Nathan's betrayal. Clarity replaced fear with purpose. Before leaving, Daniel handed her one final item. It was a slim flash drive attached to a plain silver key ring. "Everything I have verified is stored here," he said. "Review it with your attorney if you decide to move forward. And one more thing." Claire paused. "Someone purchased a guest pass for the yacht several days ago, using your legal name. Whoever did it wanted to make certain nobody could stop you from boarding." Claire frowned. "I never requested one." "Exactly." Their conversation ended with a simple handshake. Daniel walked toward the parking lot, while Claire remained beside the lake for several more minutes. She watched sunlight dance across the water until her phone vibrated softly inside her purse. Nathan's name appeared on the screen. She answered after the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart," he said warmly. "I just wanted to check on my girls. I might be working late again tonight, but I promise I will make it up to both of you this weekend." I have something very special planned. Claire closed her eyes for just a second before answering with perfect calm. I know, she said softly. I will be there. Nathan laughed, completely misunderstanding her words. As the call ended, Claire looked once more at the cream-colored envelope resting beside the flash drive inside her purse. For the first time since everything began, she realized she was no longer walking toward uncertainty. She was walking toward the exact moment someone else had been preparing for long before she ever discovered the truth. The limousine door closed behind Claire with a quiet click that somehow sounded louder than the city itself. As the driver guided the car toward the marina, she rested both hands over her stomach and watched familiar streets slide past the tinted window. Every traffic light, every cafe, every office building reminded her of a life that had seemed perfectly ordinary only a few months ago. It was remarkable how quickly certainty could disappear without making a sound. At home that evening, Nathan behaved exactly as he always had. He complimented the dinner she prepared, asked about her prenatal appointment, and spent nearly 20 minutes assembling the baby's bookshelf in the nursery. Watching him carefully tighten each screw with patient precision felt almost surreal. This was the same man whose late-night excuses no longer matched the facts she had quietly collected. The same man who still smiled every time their daughter kicked. Claire wondered whether people changed overnight or whether they simply became better at hiding who they had always been. Before going to bed, Nathan kissed her forehead and whispered, "Next weekend is going to change everything for us." Claire looked into his eyes for several seconds before softly replying, "I believe you." Neither of them meant the same thing. Long after Nathan fell asleep, Claire carried her laptop into the guest room. She inserted Daniel's flash drive and began opening folders one by one. Financial summaries, property transfers, corporate structures, email archives. Everything had been carefully organized with dates and supporting documents. Daniel had not exaggerated. The material painted a far more complicated picture than Claire had imagined. Then she discovered a folder simply labeled personal. Inside were photographs taken over nearly a year. Nathan and Vanessa leaving restaurants, charity events, private airport terminals, luxury hotels. Most images showed nothing inappropriate by themselves. Yet together they documented a relationship that had quietly existed while Nathan continued promising his wife that endless business obligations kept him away from home. Claire closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. Oddly enough, the photographs no longer hurt. That chapter of grief had already passed. What captured her attention instead was the final document inside the folder. It contained a guest list for the upcoming yacht celebration. Investors, corporate board members, media personalities, several state officials, influential business journalists. Every important relationship Nathan had spent years cultivating would be standing on that deck. Then Claire noticed one final name added only 48 hours earlier. Eleanor Winslow. She had never met the woman personally, but everyone in American finance knew exactly who she was. Eleanor had built one of the country's largest private investment firms from almost nothing and had earned a reputation for backing entrepreneurs long before Wall Street noticed them. More importantly, she almost never attended public celebrations. Her appearance alone guaranteed national business coverage. Claire quietly remembered something Daniel had mentioned during their meeting. Someone else has been preparing for this moment. Her phone buzzed with a calendar reminder from her attorney confirming their appointment the following morning. Claire gathered every document, copied the flash drive onto an encrypted backup, and placed the original inside the same ivory envelope that now seemed to hold every unanswered question surrounding her marriage. As dawn approached, she finally stepped onto the balcony outside the guest room. The city skyline glowed beneath the first hints of morning light, while cool air drifted through the silence. Her daughter gave another gentle movement beneath her heart. Claire smiled for the first time without forcing it. "You are already teaching me something," she whispered. "Real strength is not making the loudest entrance. It is knowing exactly when to speak." Hundreds of miles away, preparations for the yacht celebration continued through the night. Caterers confirmed guest counts. Florists arranged white orchids across polished tables. Television crews secured waterfront filming permits. Everyone expected an evening celebrating success, romance, and new beginnings. No one realized that another guest had already begun preparing for the same event with a completely different purpose. And before the sun set on Saturday, One quiet introduction would leave every carefully planned speech suddenly meaningless. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of flawless weather money could never guarantee. The harbor shimmered beneath a sky brushed with soft shades of gold and blue, while luxury cars lined the private entrance leading toward the marina. Guests stepped onto the yacht dressed in tailored tuxedos and elegant evening gowns, greeting one another with polished smiles and carefully practiced confidence. Business leaders exchanged handshakes. Reporters adjusted camera angles. Influencers searched for the perfect backdrop against the sunset. Everything looked effortless. Everything had been rehearsed. Nathan Caldwell stood near the center of the upper deck, welcoming each guest with the ease of a man completely convinced he controlled the evening. Vanessa Pierce remained close beside him, wearing a white designer dress that drew almost as much attention as the diamonds resting against her shoulders. Every few moments, photographers asked them to move closer together. They happily obliged. Across the deck, members of Nathan's executive team quietly whispered among themselves. Several had noticed one important absence. Claire had not arrived. Nathan checked his watch without attracting attention. His expression remained calm, but he had already glanced toward the boarding entrance for different times. Vanessa noticed. "She is not coming," she said with a confident smile. She probably realized she would only embarrass herself. Nathan forced a small laugh before raising another glass to greet newly arriving investors. Yet something about the empty boarding ramp continued pulling his attention away from every conversation. At precisely 7 o'clock, the yacht's captain announced that departure clearance had been approved. Crew members untied heavy docking lines while soft music drifted across the water. Just before the engines engaged, another black vehicle stopped beside the private entrance. The driver stepped out first. Several guests barely looked up, assuming another late investor had finally arrived. Then the rear passenger door slowly opened. Claire Whitmore stepped onto the dock wearing a simple navy maternity dress beneath a cream-colored coat. No diamonds. No designer handbag. No dramatic entrance. One hand rested naturally across the gentle curve of her pregnancy, while the other carried nothing except a small ivory envelope. Conversations faded one by one. Even the musicians hesitated for a brief second before continuing their performance. Nathan stared across the dock as though he had forgotten how to breathe. Vanessa's smile disappeared almost instantly. Claire walked with calm, measured steps, neither hurried nor hesitant. She looked directly ahead without acknowledging the dozens of curious faces turning toward her. Every camera that had been pointed toward Nathan and Vanessa slowly pivoted in her direction instead. One television reporter quietly lowered her microphone and whispered to a colleague, "Is that his wife?" Neither of them needed an answer. Claire reached the boarding ramp just as a security attendant politely stepped forward. Before he could speak, another member of the event staff checked the electronic guest list on a handheld tablet. His eyebrows lifted slightly. "Mrs. Claire Caldwell," he said respectfully. "Welcome aboard." Nathan's expression changed almost imperceptibly. He had never authorized her invitation. He knew that with absolute certainty. Claire thanked the attendant with a gentle smile and continued onto the yacht as though she belonged there, because legally she still did. Vanessa folded her arms, attempting to recover her confidence. "I cannot believe she actually came," she muttered. Nathan did not answer. His eyes remained fixed on the ivory envelope resting in Claire's hand. Somehow that plain envelope unsettled him far more than her unexpected appearance. Claire stopped several feet away from them without speaking. The silence stretched across the upper deck until it became almost impossible to ignore. Then, before anyone could break the tension, another luxury sedan arrived at the dock. An older gentleman stepped out first, followed by a distinguished woman whose face immediately drew whispers from nearly every executive on board. Nathan recognized her instantly. Eleanor Winslow, one of the most influential investors in the country. She rarely attended public celebrations, and she never made unplanned appearances. Nathan instinctively straightened his jacket and started walking toward the boarding ramp, eager to welcome one of the evening's most important guests. He never noticed that Eleanor was not looking at him. Her eyes were already fixed on Claire. For one long, suspended moment, nobody moved. The gentle sound of waves brushing against the yacht's polished hull seemed louder than the conversations that had filled the deck only seconds earlier. Nathan stepped forward first, forcing a polished smile that no longer reached his eyes. Mrs. Winslow, he said confidently, extending his hand. It is an incredible honor to have you here tonight. Eleanor Winslow acknowledged him with a courteous nod, but did not accept his handshake. Instead, she continued walking until she stopped directly in front of Claire. The entire deck watched in silence. Eleanor's expression softened into a warm smile that surprised nearly everyone present. Claire, she said gently, I am so glad you decided to come. Nathan's extended hand remained awkwardly suspended before he slowly lowered it. Vanessa blinked in visible confusion. Several executives exchanged puzzled glances. Reporters instinctively stepped closer, sensing that the evening had suddenly become far more interesting than anyone anticipated. Claire returned the smile with quiet respect. Thank you for inviting me, she replied. Nathan frowned almost imperceptibly. Inviting her? That made no sense. He personally approved every name on the guest list. Before he could interrupt, Eleanor turned toward the assembled guests and spoke with the calm confidence that had earned her respect throughout the financial world. Many of you know me because I have spent the past 3 decades investing in businesses, she began. But the investment I value most has never been measured in dollars. It has always been character. The words settled over the crowd like a sudden change in weather. Nathan forced another smile, hoping to redirect the moment. Everyone, if we could begin our scheduled remarks. Eleanor raised one finger politely. Just 1 minute more. Nathan stopped speaking immediately. Few people interrupted Eleanor Winslow. Almost nobody ignored her. She looked back at Claire before continuing. Several months ago, I received a letter from someone who believed an extraordinary young woman deserved to be seen for who she truly was. Not because of wealth, not because of influence, because of integrity. Claire quietly lowered her eyes, clearly surprised that the letter had reached Eleanor personally. Vanessa folded her arms. I am sorry, she interrupted with a tight smile. But what exactly does this have to do with tonight? Eleanor turned toward her with remarkable composure. Everything. A ripple of whispers spread through the guests. Television cameras adjusted positions. Nathan felt the atmosphere slipping beyond his control. Eleanor slowly reached into her handbag and removed a familiar cream-colored envelope. Claire recognized it immediately. It matched the anonymous invitation Daniel had shown her days earlier. Eleanor carefully opened it and withdrew a handwritten note. The person who sent this asked me for only one favor, she said. They wrote, please allow the truth to arrive before assumptions become permanent. Silence settled once again. Nathan finally stepped beside Claire. His voice remained calm, but the tension beneath it was unmistakable. Claire, what is happening? Claire looked at him for several quiet seconds before answering. I came because someone believed I deserved the opportunity to hear your plans from you instead of through tomorrow's headlines. Nathan's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Vanessa looked toward him, suddenly uncertain. Around them, several board members began quietly checking messages on their phones, sensing that the carefully planned celebration had already changed course. Eleanor gently placed one hand over Claire's. You have shown remarkable dignity, she said. Far more than most people could under these circumstances. Claire smiled softly, but did not speak. Then Eleanor turned toward the crowd once more. Before this evening continues, she announced, there is one more guest I would like everyone to meet. He specifically requested to arrive only after Claire had entered the yacht. Every head turned toward the boarding ramp. A black sedan had just rolled quietly onto the private dock. The driver stepped aside as an older gentleman in a charcoal suit emerged carrying nothing except a slim leather portfolio. Nathan stared across the distance, searching his memory. Then the color slowly drained from his face. He knew exactly who the man was. He simply never expected to see him there. The older gentleman crossed the deck with the quiet confidence of someone who had never needed to announce his importance. Conversations faded into complete silence as guests instinctively stepped aside to make room for him. Nathan Caldwell recognized him immediately. Thomas Ashford, the legendary founder of Ashford Capital, the first investment firm that had ever believed in Nathan's company during its earliest and most uncertain days. Years ago, Thomas had quietly stepped away from daily operations, leaving the firm's leadership to a new generation. Public appearances had become extremely rare. Seeing him aboard the yacht was almost unimaginable. Mr. Ashford, Nathan said, forcing another smile as he hurried forward. I had no idea you were coming. This is an incredible surprise. Thomas offered a polite nod before calmly looking past Nathan toward Claire. I came because someone deserved to be acknowledged properly, he replied. Then, to the astonishment of every guest on board, he extended his hand to Claire instead. Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for accepting my invitation. Nathan froze. Your invitation? Thomas smiled gently. Yes, mine. A wave of whispers swept across the deck. Vanessa looked from Nathan to Claire, unable to understand what was unfolding. Eleanor Winslow folded her hands and quietly stepped back, allowing Thomas to continue. Many years ago, Thomas said, addressing the guests, a young entrepreneur walked into my office carrying little more than ambition and determination. His presentation had potential, but it lacked something essential. I was ready to decline the meeting until someone else spoke. Thomas turned toward Claire. That someone was Claire. Nathan stared in disbelief. Thomas continued. She was working as a volunteer coordinator during one of our entrepreneurship programs. After reviewing the presentation on her own time, she asked me to give the young man one more opportunity. She believed his character deserved a chance, even when his numbers did not yet convince anyone. Several board members exchanged stunned glances. Nathan slowly shook his head. Claire, you never told me. She answered quietly. Because I wanted you to earn your future, not spend your life believing someone handed it to you. Thomas opened the slim leather portfolio and removed a single document. I have carried this copy for years, he said. It contains the recommendation letter that convinced my investment committee to approve Nathan's first round of funding. The signature at the bottom is mine. The handwritten notes in the margin belong to Claire. Nathan accepted the document with trembling hands. He immediately recognized Claire's neat handwriting. Encouraging comments, suggestions, confidence in a dream that had barely existed at the time. She had never once mentioned it throughout their marriage. Thomas looked directly at Nathan. Success often convinces people that they arrived alone. The truth is usually much different. Nathan lowered his eyes. For the first time that evening, he seemed unable to find words. Claire stepped forward holding the same ivory envelope she had carried since arriving. She placed it gently into Nathan's hands. Everything inside belongs to you, she said calmly. Copies of the documents, the evidence, the questions I no longer need answered. My attorney already has everything else. I did not come here to embarrass you. I came because every story deserves honesty before it becomes history. No one applauded. No one spoke. Even the reporters lowered their cameras for a moment. Vanessa quietly stepped away without saying a single word, disappearing into the crowd as though she suddenly realized she no longer belonged at the center of the evening. Claire turned toward the boarding ramp. The harbor breeze lifted a strand of her hair as she rested one hand over her daughter. Eleanor and Thomas walked beside her without fanfare, simply offering silent company. Nathan remained standing alone near the center of the deck, still holding the recommendation letter and the ivory envelope that contained the truth he had spent months avoiding. As Claire reached the dock, the last light of sunset reflected across the calm water. She never looked back. She no longer needed to. Some people spend years chasing a bigger stage, only to discover that the greatest measure of success was never applause, wealth, or admiration. It was whether the people who believed in them could still recognize the person they had chosen to trust.